They was teacher pulling me to the side, Carmen, I want you to do better, even though I don't know y'all want you to do better. And they helped me with the steps. Like when I came here, they wasn't like, oh, this is 1 + 1, 2 + 2. It was just teaching us how to be a community.
When we think about schools, particularly in the current climate, we're thinking about academic achievement, which is like a fair goal. There's nothing wrong with that, but it pushes other kinds of priorities out of the way.
Schools are where we train ourselves and our future citizens, and it's where we can establish expectations for what we want out of life. If a young person enters adulthood having only known testing-driven, score-driven, competitive school environment, well, that's all they've known. And so what can we expect them to create in terms of their own communities, their own relationships, their own places of business? If they've known something else, then they'll strive to create something else. And so it's important that they know what beauty is and what love is while they're kids.
When I was raising my 2 nephews, I brought 2 of my nephews into my home, and with them being troubled and having some issues of their own, they were constantly being suspended. And I just could not figure out, why couldn't the school help me? There was no counselor, no social worker, no one that wanted to help me. And the only recourse at the time in Chicago Public Schools, according to policy, was to continue to suspend them.
If someone were to design a system that was intentionally set up to push students out of school, to set up hurdles and obstacles and all types of traps and pitfalls so that they wouldn't finish college well educated, so that they wouldn't even get to college in the first place, they would design a school to prison pipeline.
The combination of policies and practices that push kids out of school, arresting them for misbehavior, suspending them at the drop of the hat, are what we call the school to prison pipeline. And we call it that because we know, and it's documented statistically in New York and around the nation, that when kids are pushed out of school, the likelihood that they will land up in jail is significantly increased.
Nationwide, African American students are over 3.5 times more likely to be suspended out of school than their white peers. And research shows that even when they engage in the same behavior and the same conduct as white students, that they're typically treated, or quite often rather, treated more harshly. So we know that it's not so much the student behavior that's changing, it's adult responses to that behavior. And those responses often occur through a racialized lens.
I've always thought, as a teacher and as an educator, how am I either keeping my students in school or how am I pushing them out of school? It's just always been a question. And I entered the field of education knowing that teachers are sometimes those gatekeepers. And every day I come to work, I have this choice about, like, am I a gatekeeper today?
I got kicked out at the age of 16. With that, everyone else around me gave up on me, so I found myself homeless. At the age of 16, I had to survive. Found myself in the streets. At the age of 18, I found myself locked up in LA County Jail. When I got out, I knew that wasn't the place for me. I knew, because education was where my heart was. I love to learn every day. Where are our priorities at? Where are we giving back to the youth? Where are we looking out for the safety? Where are we looking out for to better people and not to lock them up? We're not animals. We're the next generation.
Our current, prison system, incarceration is really organized around this idea of incapacitation, which is really just about removing somebody from a place and not changing anything about what the situation was, what the environment was, or even that person. And it's also, I think, very similar to how we think about discipline systems in schools. If we're taught in kind of the most common place where we deal with discipline, which I think is the school system, that's our option and that's our answer, then the prison system is not a far stretch from that, right? It becomes a very conceptually related idea.
In California alone, we have built 20 prisons in the last 20 years and only 1 university. In California, we spend about $50,000 on incarceration per inmate and less than $8,000 for college students. We are number 1 in the nation in incarceration and number 43 when it comes to educating our children.
The notion of zero tolerance really has its roots in criminal justice policy. This kind of broken windows theory that if we address smaller scale incidents very harshly, then maybe we won't ever have to deal with larger scale incidents. I think in both the criminal justice context and the school discipline context, this notion of zero tolerance policies serving as some deterrent has really been completely disproven. What we see is this kind of mission creep, where young people who are simply engaged in normal adolescent behavior find themselves being pushed out and sometimes even criminalized. So this whole notion of zero tolerance gives this illusion of safety, this illusion of order, this illusion that this is what we need to keep kids safe, to keep communities safe even.
Society in general has internalized and kind of normalized that idea that punitive discipline and punitive measures for correcting non-normative behaviors should be what education is about. Zero tolerance lives out this history that you need to punish people for doing wrong, as the system defines wrong, or for not conforming to the standards of what is normal.
The students united will never be defeated. The students united will never be defeated.
What's really exciting at this moment is that nationally, in Louisiana, in Colorado, in New York City, in Los Angeles, in San Francisco, in Chicago, in Detroit, local school communities and young people, parents, educators, and administrators are coming together to say that zero tolerance doesn't work and experimenting with these alternative practices to addressing interpersonal harm and building justice for communities.
We need restorative justice. They need to learn the difference that our school is a safe haven and not a jail. Learn the difference between prison and school. And our school is where we get our education, not a sentence.
Restorative justice isn't a program, it's really a theory, a philosophy, a different approach to justice. It invites us to completely shift the way that we think about and do justice and the way that we respond to wrongdoing.
Restorative justice puts people in a place to take a pause, think about what you did, correct it, rebuild the relationship.
When that happens, I think in its best process, that includes administration, that includes teachers, that includes students, it includes parents, it includes, if there's a school police officer, it includes them, because then it makes everybody have to be part of that process of the conflict or of the harm of whatever's happened. It's also about saying that we can't throw anybody away.
Restorative justice is really a set of principles and practices that seek to build community, repair harm, and welcome students that need to be integrated into the school environment. And it looks different in every single school that it's at.
If that's a description of a circle process, so the top right, getting to know each other, being the beginning of the circle, going around clockwise to the top left being the end of a circle, that's about how much time you would spend on each part of the circle.
A lot of the practices that educators, parents, and students are interested in come from many different historical traditions and places. So it might be that they're drawing from particular indigenous tradition, or they might be drawing from a Black radical tradition, or they might be drawing from a Chicana feminist position to try to create this accountability model where everyone can try to heal from state violence as well as interpersonal violence.
The whole concept of restorative justice is like really trying to restore something that's lost. So if me and you are in an altercation, then we would look at how what we did really impacted the community.
I mean, restorative justice, right, to me, the vocabulary is important. You're restoring something. But if there's nothing to restore, you can't go too far afield with non-punitive measures. If there is no community, then it's very hard to say everybody in this room is really upset at you, So what? The front end is the most important part of the work. It's the whole work, I think, in some ways. I mean, you just wouldn't need to use suspensions if you had a better front end of your culture.
So the circle is about our future, and I have a quote about future and change, and it says, "All that you touch, you change. All that you change, changes you. The only lasting truth is change." This is from Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler. Can we go around and do a one-word check-in about how we're feeling?
Chill.
Tired. I feel good.
I feel great. I feel good. I feel energetic.
We're using various levels of restorative practices at the school right now. We've really been encouraging the teachers to use circle process in their advisories to promote community and relationships with their students. Additionally, when we've had conflicts between students, we generally try to go to circle process to avoid suspension or expulsion where possible. And then the third piece that we're working on developing right now is really the student empowerment piece, where they become leaders in facilitating the restorative process.
I got a bigger life.
I can help. It's Dante.
Next, we have a tree activity about our future.
For my tree, I put that I was born in Oakland, and I put the name that my parents gave me, Melissa Gonzalez Ruiz, because that's my name. And for like my future, it's not same, but like on the top it just says Joey, because that's the name I go by. And I like want to work in art, but I also want to do something for the LGBT community.
For the future, but I want to play for the NBA, go to college, keep my hairline, hang out with LeBron James. Yeah.
So thank you guys for participating. So now I'm going to talk about our values that we created at the beginning of the year as a class. So our values are positive, gentleness, trust, honesty, willing to try new things, respect, responsibility, one mic, leadership, and self-control.
Everybody at this school is safe because of the values that we have at the school. The teachers have a lot of respect for the kids here, and I find that amazing because at my middle school, it's like if you were failing, like you were failing, like they didn't offer you anything. But at this school, I find that the support of my teacher and other teachers here, that I can succeed.
So I'm introduced to Talking Piece, and this is a little space shuttle, little rocket thingy. And so basically we chose this because like it kind of represents the future in a way, because it's like a symbol of like technology advancement. So the first question is, how do we feel about the next few years of high school?
I guess I'm feeling a little lost because after high school, I don't really know what I want to do. It's like you have so many opportunities, like you don't know which to pick. It's like you're at a buffet. It's like it's like a food. You don't know what to get.
To be honest, I'm kind of scared because, I mean, I know what I want to do after high school, but like everybody else said, like it's a lot of work. And sometimes things don't go as you always plan them to. So maybe I don't get into the college I want to, and maybe like it's a lot of what ifs.
I feel that they started doing circles to get people to be more open, so they don't walk around with like a heavy heart all the time. The circles help people connect more, especially with the teachers and stuff like that.
So I'm excited to see how you all grow and blossom and how you lead this school.
As an educator that has really high expectations and is really likes to maximize every minute in my classroom to address learning, I had some hesitancy on giving the time. I've definitely seen an impact on how students interact with each other in the classroom in terms of their ability to empathize with each other and reach out to each other when someone's going through a hard time. I've definitely felt it in my relationships with students in that it's built trust and respect.
We're like a regular high school, like we don't go around just talking about our feelings. So when we do have circles, it's like, all right, well, I can get this off my chest because I know that I trust these people and I know that people trust me.
Okay, so for closing, just want to appreciate the person next to us. So I appreciate Sony for opening up in this circle. You did a lot of progress from last year's circle.
I want to appreciate Betty because she's a world soccer player. She's very smart.
I want to appreciate Isis for a lot, but mostly today for taking this huge risk and leading her first circle. And just being open and willing to practice something that you're doing for the first time and expanding your skill set in the world.
We can clap it up.
I think that all of my students have grown a lot because of restorative practices. One of my students, she came to me and told me that she was in an abusive relationship. It was emotionally abusive, it was like verging on being physically abusive. And we sat together for a really long time and she was willing to share it with a group of her peers. And this is a student who almost never speaks, And I asked her, would you like to focus a circle on this topic? And we actually had a circle for her. All of these students were sharing their experiences, and so many of my students have witnessed domestic violence in their homes, and I've witnessed domestic violence in my home. I mean, it's not something that is a unique human experience, but for her, because she was in it, and she felt like she needed to be in it because she was feeling loved by this person in other ways, I think restorative practice really actually helped her name it and then have an action plan around it and have peer support around it. She left the relationship. She developed this just sense of herself as a valuable person. And I didn't do anything other than listen to her and host the circle. Her encouragement to speak and to know that she was of value, I'm just not sure. I really am not sure that she would have spoken.
It can be easy to say, like, well, we don't suspend and expel, but then there's no real accountability set up in place. I think it's so important that people who have been harmed have an opportunity to speak their truth about what happened, about what they need to make things right, and that the people who created the harm have an opportunity to say, yes, I did this. It was wrong. It doesn't make me a terrible person to have done something wrong, and I want to make it right, and here's what I'm going to do to make it right. And I think that restorative practices has the ability to facilitate that process.
I think so many of us were raised with this idea that we have to be punished in a particular way if we create harm or if we engage in certain behaviors or act out in particular ways. And I think that restorative justice actually demands that educators get to know their students and to see behavior as an expression of need, and that actually that behavior isn't acceptable, isn't allowed, but that the path to like uprooting that behavior looks different from punitive consequences.
I was one of them students when I first came in that was, I guess, messing with the balance of the culture of YJC. And instead of getting kicked out, instead of getting like punished or whatnot, it was always, we sat down and had a conversation about why was I doing it. It wasn't me being criminalized, it wasn't me being pushed away, it was finding the root, the cause of why I was doing it, and me making right by the people that I harmed.
Restorative justice has the potential to really help move us from an ethic of domination and separation and competition to an ethic of collaboration and inclusivity and interrelatedness. I think it's profoundly radical.
The Fairness Committee is an engine in itself for inculcating, investing, spreading the language of the school's values.
It gets students to think about what these mean in their own lives, but also how they can engage in conversations around them and bring nuance and contestation to their meaning, because they're not static ideals. If something happens in the school, we want students to be like, that kind of violated respect for the intellect. And if it violates respect for the intellect, I need to frame my grievance at fairness around that.
The Spanish teacher, she heard a student call a friend or use a homophobic slur in addressing a friend. The teacher, in this case, Simona, is the person who's bringing the other student to, or who hopes to bring the student to the Fairness Committee. In order for it to be successful, I need to speak to the other student. We could call him Steve. I need to speak to Steve and see if he's willing to go through this process. So I'm the facilitator, and 3 students and Simona are the Fairness Committee, and my work is to facilitate the conversation among them so that they come to a clear understanding of what happened, what school values were violated, and what consequences would adequately repair the situation. In this case, we decided that each of us in the group would place one rainbow flag, one sign of allyship in the school somewhere, so that we might help repair the situation of the casual use of a homophobic slur in the hallway with the somewhat casual but still important statement that there are allies here too.
I remember one student saying, I knew at that moment how much I was cared for when I was taken to Fairness. I knew that the school cared about me, wasn't going to let me get away with any little thing.
We always started with this idea that we want to learn from our own experience, that we wanted to be a school that wasn't simply like, here's our design, this is what we're going to do, and we're just going to do it no come hell or high water, but more that we wanted to be a school that would use the experiences we had with the kids that we had and try and make our school better.
What makes us stand out is that the school culture here, I think, is healthier than a lot of other places that serve the kind of kids that we serve under the constraints that we serve them.
You know, I think in the beginning we had this idea that if you treated kids in the way that you wanted to be treated, that they would respond in kind. And I think on a deeper level that is true, but I think in a school systems method way, you know, you have to kind of come in and give them really clear guidelines and rules.
So before I came to Lines, I was constantly fighting, like really fist fighting, getting hurt, getting cuts, fighting with other people I didn't even know from a hole in the wall, and it was just like I needed a new place. When I came into this community, it was different. They would teacher pulling me to the side, Carmen, I want you to do better, even though I don't know you, I want you to do better, and they helped me with the steps. Like when I came here, they wasn't like, oh, this is 1 + 1, 2 + 2. It was just teaching us how to be a community. The community is a puzzle. So if once you harm the puzzle, you take the pieces, and it's just like you yourself keep them, because it's just like you don't want to say you did it, why you did it, I understand you did it, but then once you do that, you give the puzzle pieces back, and the community can't be a community without all those pieces.
I have a kid in our 9th grade now whose mom I've known for years, and she's sick now. And hell if that's not the first, second, and third thing he's thinking about all day. And for people who want to say no excuses or this or that, it's like, no, I've got a good one. You know, like his mom has cancer. You know, his natural inclination as a 9th grader to push boundaries is confused as well now too, because mom can't reach him as well. So he refused to go to detention the other day. You know, part of our dialogue with a teacher in that case, right, has to be, well, yeah, we're the boss, and you know, we have rules here and stuff like that. But we have to talk about what's going on with him. And I think that's a big thing that for us at this point now, and maybe it tires people out sometimes, but it can't leave my mind. One thing we call a group assist, it's our version of a circle that is like addressing a certain kid or a certain group of kids' behavior. If you think of the poles in circles as 30 people in a room, all sharing about a whatever important object to them, and then on the other end you have a sheriff and a victim's family and an offender. Somewhere in between there is this idea that, like, hey Tina, we're all sitting together, the 6 of us, the 8 of us, maybe not the 30 of us. These 2 guys are your friends. These 2 guys were in class yesterday. Here's your teacher. Here's the facilitator. We got to talk about you being late every day. It's a pointed, directed, circle. That can also be done in the full setting if you have a strong community, you know. But that's the kind of mechanism, though, that teachers have to be comfortable with and it has to be part of their practice. You know, two kids blow up each other in the hallway. There's certainly a part of running a school where you need to regulate when people blow up in a hallway. They have to know they can't do that. But at the same time, very often that's just because a conflict is happening there. And if kids go through mediation, the thinking is that they're learning more about how conflict works and how to manage themselves in conflict. And that also is freeing up the wheels of justice, if you will.
My name is Ashley.
And my name is Javier, okay? Su nombre es Ashley.
My name
okay.
is Yulady. What's your name? Amy. And the rules here are, you know, one mic. When you speak, she doesn't speak. When she speaks, you don't speak.
¿Quién quiere decir su historia primero?
She could go first.
Empieza tú, que tú sabes muy bien lo que tú hiciste.
Okay, I'll start. Since the school started, we became enemies. So each other used to talk behind our backs. She used to say something bad about me, and some other student used to tell me what she said about me. I said something bad about her. People go to her and tell her what to talk about her.
Ok. Angie, podemos escuchar tu historia ahora.
Él no tiene que estar subiendo fotos mías a su página. Si ella tiene algún problema conmigo, ella viene ante mí y me dice hoy para resolverlo y ya.
When was it ever okay to believe rumors? Because they are my friend.
Oh, wow, ella no es amigo mío.
Wait a minute. But a lot of the times, friends do want to see fights too. I know. A lot of the times you can't believe your friends. You can't trust a lot of your friends. If you didn't hear it from her mouth, then why should you believe it? You know what I'm trying to say, right?
You know, there are times when kids are going to make up and be friends again, and there's sometimes where they aren't. And what I like to have kids lead with, if they're not going to be friends, is not to say ignore each other. We need to agree to some sort of regime or like system that will maintain like peace. And so what you try and get to is, okay, if you see a post on like Facebook, when you come in tomorrow, make sure you tell a dean that something was on Facebook.
Well, I have been in a mediation. You know, it's been a couple problems, but no, I think it makes me feel more like it's more confidential. And since it's students talking with other students, it feels like more better, you know, instead of talking with an adult.
Like to understand more.
Yeah, they understand more. Most schools, you know, if you get into a fight, whatever, it's suspension and that's it. But right here is just like a second chance, you know. And the fact is that you could take both, you know, people in the problem could take out what they're feeling, you know. They could take out a little bit of anger, but not fight, you know. They could just squash it.
It makes my job easier, one. But two, you know, they take real pride in it, and I get to then watch them train the other kids, which is really good for me to see. I'm like, okay, they really like learned it, and now they know how to bring other people into that kind of work. It's good to see it, because then they own it, and then it sustains itself.
One thing I remember I said, I think in the beginning of last year, it was like I wanted some bureaucracy. I wanted some things to slow down the reaction time of adults to kids. We're human beings doing this work. If a kid curses me out, and that happens, you know, often enough, or if a kid, you know, does something particularly disruptive, you can't be completely clinical about it. But the way that you can, as a school, be clinical about it is have a lot of wait a minute kind of structures.
Obviously, in schools, students don't like certain teachers. So I wanna ask her, like, why is the reason that she decided to take like the specific teacher's item. So she basically like took one of the teacher's personal belongings and she threw it out the window, and she was refusing to sit down when she was asked to.
Justice panel is different from mediation. You can't ask for justice panel. You get put on it. So a teacher would come to the dean, the principal, anybody who's in charge, and say, this person was acting crazy on a trip. I want him to go through that. Okay, our job is just to ask them questions, figure out what's going on, and get a consequence.
What's gonna happen is you're gonna give us your account of what happened that day. These guys are gonna ask you some questions to follow up. And then after that, we're gonna talk amongst ourselves. You're gonna wait outside and figure out what next steps are gonna be. Okay, so whenever you're ready.
Somebody had threw this knitted thing at me and I threw it out the window. And that was all that happened.
What happened after that?
James told me to get away from the window, and then I was still standing there looking at him. And then he said it again, and then I went to my seat.
Is your first reaction towards someone throwing something at you to just throw it out the window?
I knew if I threw it at him, he would throw it back, so.
And you don't think calling a teacher to come towards you to take it from you would not be something
The teacher
positive?
was watching, and he didn't do anything.
Does anybody else have any other questions or comments they want to make to Destiny?
So you didn't know this was Teresa's exactly, right? Okay.
Okay. Can you wait right outside? Okay, so Juan, what was gonna be your suggestion for a consequence?
Community service, definitely. Like picking up trash around the classrooms.
I like it. Cleaning up 8th grade
Cleaning
classrooms.
Yeah, I really agree with that.
Okay. Any other suggestions to add on top of that, or you feel like that's solid?
Did she apologize to Teresa?
I don't know if she did, but if she didn't, then we can make that happen.
Well, for what you did, you're gonna get 2 days of community service. You have to go grab the stuff that you threw out the window, and you had to apologize to James and Teresa.
And your community service is cleaning up the 8th grade classrooms.
During lunch.
Can you agree to that?
Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you, Destiny. Is there anything that you would have liked to have gone differently, better?
For some parts, she does understand what she did was wrong, but for some parts, I don't think that she understands what the danger could be throwing stuff out the window.
Okay, so what we can do then is, when her community service is over, we can bring her back and then try to ask her what she thinks about the whole thing now, and then maybe if we feel still unsatisfactory about it, we can try to drive that point home.
Yeah.
Because I feel like she know what she did was wrong, and she's gonna do the consequences or whatever the case may be, but I don't think that she's gonna understand the fact about being responsible and doing things for yourself.
Maybe the community service will help with that.
Getting people who've been through the situation, like me and other people who got into fights or robbery, doesn't matter what it is, having them in your justice panel makes it even stronger. It doesn't even have to be a person that's really smart in school. It is just having a person that's like little off track can make it even stronger.
How do you feel if somebody has somebody in your grade? Like, do you feel like you should hold back on what you should say, or you should?
No, because what you did wrong is what you did wrong. It doesn't matter. You could be my brother. If you're a true friend, you're gonna try to help that person to make them to make them realize what they did is wrong.
It makes some kids uncomfortable, but more often than not, they'd rather be able to do that and have to face that than have to tell their mom they're suspended and be home.
I want to give people chances. I'm speaking for kids, teenagers, people that are growing up, people that are moving on, people that are going to another grade. It's just they deserve another chance, because everybody makes mistakes and they learn from them and they move on.
That means you don't just kick the kid out of school. That means you don't kick the teacher out who's struggling their first year. You say people have the capacity to get better and to grow. And so you need to create structures and have relationships that give people the space to do the growing that you believe can happen for human beings. I suspended a lot of kids today. That took 15 minutes of my time to do that. Restorative work actually takes time. So it takes an understanding that the disciplinarian's job means more than just clearing out the school or clearing out the hallway. It means doing this other kind of work with kids, and then you need to give the disciplinarian literal time and like figurative time to do that kind of work. Our administration has okayed the idea that for an hour a day, there's a small cadre of kids that's going to rotate. Like, it's not the same kids in Justice Panel every day that can miss class. That I can have a peer mediation program such that kids who aren't like straight A kids can be pulled out of class to do that kind of work. And so if we don't have that like green light from the admin, it doesn't take place. If you don't build in the time, if you don't commit the like resources to it, that's it.
In the triage sense of school, which is my least favorite thing about school, we had gotten rid of the most difficult kid in our school. This was the day that he'd been arrested, the day that clearly he would not be coming back to our school. You know, there was a part of that moment that fairly was relief, and because he was a gang leader, there was a lot of like drama last year. He brought a gun to school. That's the reason. And I would say this, and I would swear this in a court of law, and he agrees, like, he didn't bring it for school. He brought it for out there, you know? And he never had any intention of using it in school, but he got caught with it. And this is a kid who doesn't back down in any conversation, but he said to me this one first, he's like, oh, why did I bring it, you know? Jared wrote this email, which I think was really foundational and affected me for life. Acknowledging, like, you know, look, it's not anybody's fault that he didn't do well, but we have to get better at him. We have to get better at kids like this. Number one, we can't pretend that there aren't going to be more kids with this set of issues, and number two, it's our mandate. You know, I mean, we're supposed to teach kids like him.
We think about discipline issues. We should also think about teacher stress, and it gets uncoupled, but classroom management is one of the top reasons people leave the teaching profession. And if you think about going to your workday every day and having stressful, negative, high conflict interactions, that's good reason people are leaving the profession. So we also, when we think about kind of dismantling the school to prison pipeline, we should also think about bolstering and supporting the adults in schools.
The union is a structure that exists already that is bringing teachers together in a way that usually we're not brought together. It can be very useful for public schools that are unionized to use their union chapter on the school level to bring up new ideas and issues that don't have to go through administration.
It's important that in each different context, what works for that context is introduced by someone within that environment and supported by someone in that environment. So it's almost like a pilot within a community.
It's wonderful to see and be a witness to staff who used to yell on a regular basis and kick students out on a regular basis. You know, they go to Miss Kamisha, go to the restorative justice, to, okay, see me after class, I want to talk to you. Just getting that buy-in with them usually comes from the building of relationship. You just got to start with that one person, with that two people, with the handful of people that you have. They need to meet on a regular basis so that they become a support for each other. A year and a half into our 3-year whole school approach, students are now running circles, and students are co-circle keeping. Our suspensions went down 87%.
If we were to have a new administrator who came into our classes every day, looked at our agenda, looked for learning targets that related to California state standards or Common Core standards, and we were having a circle, I think the emphasis on social and emotional development and how much it's prioritized in schools actually really impacts whether or not restorative justice practices are a part of school.
We know that there is a school to prison pipeline here in Oakland Unified. It's very real because we literally see it happening right before our eyes. We want to dismantle it, and I think restorative justice is doing that here. I mean, we have schools that have eliminated their disproportionate discipline. The district is facing a challenge of putting their money where their mouth is, quite frankly, because they want RJ to happen, and yet where's this money coming from? You know, we really need a big influx of cash to really do this right.
I think people do need to be on board. They need to learn about it. They need to be open to evolve, like its evolution over time. But like with so many other educational initiatives, even I think well-intended, progressive, student-centered ones, they don't work when people don't understand what they are.
The policy change work still has to happen. There has to be continued organizing around the issue. Absolutely. But the more we get the policy to change, we have to also take away the excuses. They can put it on paper, but they still have the excuse of saying, I don't know what it is, I don't know how to do it. We need more training on restorative justice. We need people to train people. We need people in place to show them how to implement restorative justice programming, what that looks like, program design, implementation. We have to move to the business of taking away the excuses.
We started calling our accountability process restorative justice until we started critically looking at what are we restoring. And we couldn't really answer that. We feel like the history of people of color in this country is really negative and oppressive. So we don't want that kind of restoration. Really what we want is transformation. And we want people to have an opportunity to transform themselves as well as the community that they're taking part in, whether it's this school community or the larger community outside of here.
We're not going to call the police. We're not going to call a dean. We're here. We believe in each other. We trust in each other. So it's a way of saying like, NYPD, thanks, but we got this.
What gives me strength is knowing that I have a voice and knowing that things happen when people stand up and fight for it.
I stand here before you today to tell you that no young person should be deprived of the essential tools and skills that they need to succeed in our society. We want college prep, not prison prep. We need education, not incarceration. Right.
Restorative justice is not just about, a new option that's fighting against, kind of push out or disproportionate sentencing, which it is, and it's really important in that way, but it's also part of a longer, I believe it's part of a longer historical legacy of people fighting for the right to be educated.
My family, on both sides of my family, I remember being in circle. When I went to the South with my father's family, I remember sitting around in a circle and my grandfather sharing the stories of our family and what we went through, what people went through in the South. But we didn't have that restorative justice language. And my grandmother, she put a pot on and everybody came and talked. If that's not restorative justice, I don't know what is. So we're just bringing everybody back to the table of doing what we already knew how to do, but just bringing it to the forefront.